Greetings. Welcome to In Conversation with Trevor, brought to you by Heart and Soul Broadcasting Services. I go beyond the headlines and beyond the sensational. Today I'm in conversation with Tawanda Nyambirai, a lawyer and an entrepreneur. If you enjoy this conversation, remember to subscribe, to like, and to share. Let's get down to some business.
So I am that person who does not even trust his conscience. I have to defer to someone superior who can guide. I'm not driven by millions of dollars. What drives me is access to resources. So I go back to Nam Commerce Drive. He says, of course, you can buy it back. You can buy my shares. I called the Steward Bank anyway.
Tawanda Nyambirai, my brother, welcome to In Conversation with Trevor.
Thank you, Mkoma. I am grateful that you have made time to have me on.
Thank you, Tawanda. I mean, I'm so excited, Tawanda. I don't even know where to start because of the impressive portfolio of businesses that you have built. I am looking forward to extracting lessons from you around leadership, around strategy, and around savings. I mean, savings, looking at what you've done and where you started, I think a lot of people are going to get some inspiration from here. Looking back, Tawanda, from where you are right now, are there things that you've done that surprise you? That I did this? Are you surprised by what you've been able to achieve this far?
Not really. For me, it's my way of life. I don't look at what I have in terms of the value of what I have. I don't look at the popularity, but I look at the impact that I can have on those who are around me and on our nation as a whole.
Please proceed.
And when I look at that, I've not had sufficient impact.
Wow. I'm going to press you there because I like the way we've started this. So in that regard, what principles and values do you lead and live by? What principles and values do you lead and live by?
I was born in a Christian family, a Pentecostal Christian family. My values are rooted in Christianity. That is what shaped my values, what is important in my life. Honesty, integrity, and hard work.
Honesty, integrity, and hard work. Faith, Christianity. In this tough environment that we are in, how do you pitch up as a Christian in business every day? How do you take your Christianity into the marketplace?
What I try to do is to let what I do speak for itself. I consider myself an ordinary person like everybody else. So when I go into the marketplace, I don't have a pedestal or a platform from which I can engage others. I engage with the other people on the basis that I'm like them. I've got so many faults. A sinner saved by grace. I do my best every day to improve my character, to improve myself as a person.
Are there things that you do as habits on a day-to-day basis, routines that you do to lead yourself and to become a better person?
I love reading and I love listening to gospel music. Gospel music is good for me because, when I was in university, I was in university at a time where we had Professor Walter Kamba as our vice chancellor. And I was
the good old days.
Yes, I was there when he made his popular or notorious speech in the president of the late His Excellency Robert Ncube, where he said there are so many unprofessional fingers interfering in the affairs of the university. And he says, when I die, I would like the epitaph to read, "Here lies a man whose conscience was his master." From there, I said, I can't trust my conscience to be my master. Because at times when you backslide or fall, your conscience becomes seared and you lose some sensitivities. And I chose a master, and I believe my master is the Lord Jesus Christ, because he will help me with my conscience where my conscience fails me. So I am that person who does not even trust his conscience. I have to defer to someone superior who can guide me. So music gets me there. At times when I get off the rails and I listen to the music, it draws me closer and it revives my conscience, and I become more sensitive to what is wrong and what is right.
And it corrects you.
Yes, it does.
And it convicts you.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Wow. Law has been the foundation of the person that you are, apart from God, apart from the Bible. Tell me, the decision to become a lawyer, was that yours? Was it your father? Was it a friend? How did you become a lawyer? Who influenced you to become a lawyer?
You have touched on a very sensitive issue in my life. I never aspired to become a lawyer. In school, I was good in the sciences. I would be given nicknames like Mathematica and so on. That was the area of my strength. Until after I finished my Form 4, I did my Form 4 at an upper top in Gutu called Gumindoga. And the school omitted to submit applications for placement. Although my results were good, I was not allocated a school to do my A-levels. So the headmasters then used to have meetings where they would then pick on those students they would like to be at their schools who had not been allocated any particular schools. And I was one of them. And Vabeta, who was the headmaster of Chibi High School, selected me as one of the potential students. That's how I found myself at Chibi High School, which did not have sciences and had arts. Even when I made my selection of the arts subjects to pursue at A-level, I did not think I would become a lawyer. At that time, I was so much into the Bible, I thought I would become a pastor. My heroes were people like Renard Bonnke. I would read his books, look for his books and his audio cassettes. And so I chose divinity as one of the subjects. I studied divinity. I studied English literature. I studied history, with the objective that one day I would become a pastor and serve God. Until there was an epidemic at my school, a cholera epidemic. I was one of the two victims, the late Jeremiah Mapaikwa, who is late, and myself. So when time came for us to be taken to hospital, I ran away. I went into the bushes. And I said to myself, I don't want to die of cholera. I will die. I don't want to die of cholera. Let me fast. I would rather die of hunger before the Lord. That's the decision I made. And you know, my former classmates would be my witnesses on what happened. So I didn't go to Masvingo for treatment. I stayed in Gomorepachivi at the school. 3 days, 3 nights, no food. I was fasting. And the third night, I had a dream. In my dream, I heard a voice which said, I've healed you. You will not become a pastor. You will become a lawyer.
Wow.
When I woke up,
wow,
I felt some fires in my body and I felt healed. And I screamed, and all my friends, Vana Mkwaje, Ben Mawere, Alfred Soba, Hamad Ziri, they came around my bed and I said, guys, I've been healed. And during those times, the stepper was we would take some brown sugar, mix with water, and that's what we would drink. And they brought me that with bread to see whether I could just keep it in. And I ate and I was okay. For a few weeks, my friends would open the window to the classroom. I'll be listening to the lectures from outside the classroom. Then I made a decision. I'm going to become a lawyer. So in the choice of degrees to do at the University of Zimbabwe, number 1 was law, number 2 was accounts. I didn't want to put in number 3. That's how it all changed.
I'm looking at you because I'm like, the man didn't want to be a lawyer. He wanted to do something else. Is this not God's hand?
It's the grace of God.
It's the grace of
God.
Any regrets at all?
None at all. None at all.
Wow. I'm like
sounds like fiction, but that's my reality.
Wow. Well, I believe it. I believe it. So you then leave the University of Zimbabwe to join, what was the first law firm that you joined? Was it Kanta Nimmerman, or you went somewhere else?
When I left the University of Zimbabwe, I got a scholarship to pursue further studies in Sweden. And at the time, I thought I would be an international lawyer, join the UN or things like that. So I went to study peace and conflict resolution at the University of Uppsala in Sweden. It was a 6 months course, which I took. When I completed it, I got a scholarship to pursue further studies to master's degree level. I came back. And when I came back, I was determined to work at Canton Timmerman. I went straight to Canton Timmerman. And I asked to see the managing partner, Harry Cantor, who was kind enough and humble enough to agree to see me. I told him I wanted to work there. He said I was too late. They'd employed Rudo Mungu. They'd actually looked for me through Mrs. Rune at the University of Zimbabwe, and they couldn't find me. They were told I'd gone abroad. So I left. Before that week was over, Harry Cantor was all over the show. At the time, there were no cell phones. They used to communicate using telegrams and so on. So he looked for me at the University of Zimbabwe because as I left, Rudo tendered a resignation. So when I went to the University of Zimbabwe, Mrs. Rune handed to me the telegraph asking me to see Harry Cantor at Canton Timmerman. So I went there and said, strange enough, just after you left, Rudo said, this is not my thing, I'm leaving. So welcome to Canton Timmerman. That's how I joined them. Then after I joined Canton Timmerman, then came the invitation for me to pursue my master's degree. And the person I consulted who was largely responsible for my decision not to leave was Professor Ncube. Yeah, I'd done some research for him when I was a student. I was close to him. And I called. At the time, he was at Chambers. I said, Prof, what do I do? He says, Tawanda, many people would like to be at Canton Timmerman. I'm a professor. If I can have an opportunity to join Canton Timmerman, I would come. I would suggest you keep your job.
And that's what you did.
And that's what I did. And I'm forever grateful to him.
What a journey you had with Canton Timmerman. Reflect with me, if you may, some of the key cases that you dealt with that have remained in your mind as having been some of the victories or the defeats that came from you being an attorney with Canton Timmerman.
Once my mind was set to practice law, I said to myself, I don't want to lose cases. I will do my homework. If my client does not have a good case, I will tell him to settle. This principle, I borrowed it from the biblical principle. Who goes to war before sending emissaries to evaluate the strength of your enemy?
Otherwise, you build without checking if they've got enough money to build.
Exactly. Otherwise, people will pass by and say, he started but did not finish. I did not want to be that person. So on day one, after receiving instructions, I will conduct my research and determine whether or not my client is a good case. If my client doesn't have a good case, I'll say, I'm sorry, we have to negotiate for a settlement. I think in pursuing a settlement, these are the weak points, these are the strong points, this is the bottom line. That's my approach to law practice. It's always been. And as a result,
Was that the prevailing standard way of handling cases during your time?
No, not at all. Some lawyers would litigate because the client wants to litigate. I was not that kind of lawyer. I would litigate because I would believe my client is a good case. If my client did not have a good case, I would find the best result for my client and negotiate for it without wasting the client's cost. I'm a lawyer who wants to add value and only charge on the basis of the value I would have added. If I don't add value, I don't charge. And that has always been my principle. What value can I add to my client's case to get the best outcome for my client?
You don't charge per hour, even when you lose and lose desperately. The client still pays through the mouth.
Not me. I would rather not charge anything.
Tell me, you had a wonderful time at Kanda Nyimame. How long were you there for?
I joined Kanda Nyimame in June 1993 to 1998. That's about 5 years.
5 years.
Yes. April 1998, I was out of Kanda Nyimame.
Am I right? I mean, I was reading something which leads me to believe you actually say, correct me if I'm wrong, my decision to take on Strive Masiwa's case was one of the factors that strained my relationship with my colleagues at Kanda Nyimame, and you resigned in 1997. Is that a reasonable reflection of what transpired?
Yes, in law practice, we have targets. Fee targets. And, all lawyers are driven to make money. And when I took on Strive, he was down, but not out. He had exhausted all the legal channels he could exhaust. He had spent his fortune in pursuing a case, which eventually, due to politics, he could not achieve his strategic objective. And by the time I met Strive, he was now a man of faith. So, after all the successes in the Supreme Court, the government decided to enact laws saying, before you can operate a mobile telecommunications business, you must have a license. And they invited people to tender. He tendered and he lost. And the advice he got was, your solution is political, you can't litigate. And the lawyer who was acting for him, Anthony Eastwood, at the time, he was the leader. I can say everyone in the firm was Strive's lawyer, but Anthony Eastwood was leading at the time. He had a misfortune. His son had committed suicide, so he couldn't continue representing Strive. So Strive came to Kanda Nyimame one day, sat at the reception. It was a very busy day for me. So I couldn't see him immediately. And the man was so patient. I think he came during the afternoon. I only managed to see him at around 9 p.m.
I'll stop you there.
Yeah.
Strive has been patient. He's waiting for you by the reception. You finally see him at 9 p.m. I want us to take a break and come back, because I think this is a very important chapter in your life and perhaps in Strive life. So at home, don't go away. When we come back, we'll go back to that reception and meet with Tawanda and Strive and see where the story goes. See you on the other side.
I'm sorry, I would call it narrow-mindedness, because I cannot do well unless my entire environment does well.
Greetings. My name is Trevor Ncube, host of In Conversation with Trevor. Zimbabwe's most engaging conversational show. I go beyond the headlines and beyond the sensational. We've brought before your screens change makers from arts, business, and politics, and from the region. Please join our growing community of viewers. Subscribe, like, and share. Welcome back to our conversation with Tawanda Nyambirai, a lawyer and entrepreneur. So when we took the break, Tawanda, you were going to the reception to meet with Strive, who's been waiting for you for a while. What then happened?
He had been sat in the boardroom. I think he had read every magazine in our reception. The guy was extremely patient. And this was my first one-on-one with him. Previously, we would attend lunches at Canton Timmerman together. But I hadn't had a direct one-on-one with him. This was the first time. So we sit in there. The guy was fasting. And he started by talking about the word of God. That is so characteristic of him. Even to the present day, when I have my meetings with him, we probably spend more than 60% of the meeting discussing the word of God and other things, and the last 40% discussing the business. So typically he started like that. And that's when I noticed that the man was extremely humble and very impactful in terms of his insights. He shared a dream he had, which I don't have the liberty to share because it's not mine.
Absolutely.
But it was because of that he had come to me and had made a choice that I should represent him. I considered his case and I said, I will represent you. I understand the circumstances. I will not be charging. So that's how I took on Strive's case. Of course, there were things like disbursements that needed to be paid. Some donors just cropped up, people who would come and assist. That's how we carried Strive's case.
But it caused a rupture within the team.
Within the firm, what I need to say is I was one of the top fee earners at Canton Timmerman, and I continued to be, even if I was handling Strive's case, which took a lot of my time and for which I did not charge. But I continued to be one of the highest fee earners in the firm at the time. So in terms of meeting my targets, I always exceeded them. That should not have been a problem, but unfortunately, some tensions brewed within the firm, and there were unnecessary clashes with the other partners, which I didn't mind. You know, it was a law firm of high flyers, IDs, strong characters,
lots of egos,
big egos. Mine was big even. So I was used to that kind of thing. But on an unrelated matter, there was a partners meeting. I didn't like the way conversations went. So I decided, no, I'm being pushed out. Let me quit. I do not know. In my view, it could have been issues of succession because the senior partners like Harry Cantor, Melvin Imameno were old, and Anthony Eastwood was already facing problems. So there could have been issues of, who is going to be the top dog in the event that these guys decide to call it quits. It could have been that. And there were lots of tensions surrounding those kinds of issues of succession planning and so on. And because of the caliber of lawyers that were there was no clear successor. And I don't think anyone acknowledged anybody as a clear successor. And that's when I made a decision. I said, there comes a time when you think it's enough. You don't want to waste your time on things that are not relevant. And I decided to resign. When I decided to resign, the firm made a very unusual decision. They said, you give 6 months notice. So I resigned in 1997.
Yeah.
And I had to spend 6 months.
This was a life-changing decision for you, wasn't it?
It was, but, the sort of person I am is I didn't take much time thinking about that. Since I had 6 months to go, I said, I'll figure it out later. Let me focus on these 6 months. I still have Strive's case to finish and many other cases. So I focused on my work. Then one day I get a call from one of the Chingoka brothers, who was, I think, the one who was into, was it cricket?
Paul.
Yes. So I got a call through the landline. Tawanda Nyambirai, I'm Paul Chingoka. Can I meet you at Monomtapa? What for? He says, I've got a proposition for you. So I went, met with him, and he said, my client is Real Africa Jewel Link. There was a corporate finance firm that was very vibrant at the time.
I remember that. Ian
Donovan and Farai Rodzi and Jack Perry and all those big names. So he says, my client wants to offer you an opportunity with them. They can give you some shareholding and so on. And at Real Africa Jewel Link was my friend Farai Rodzi, who I was with at college. I didn't like the terms. And I immediately told him I could not accept the proposal. Not that I had any better proposal. I just didn't like it, and I decided to reject it. Went ahead with my work as usual. Then one day,
still at
Canton Mamen, serving my notice. Then I get a call from James Mushore. NMBZ, a client. I done a good job for them. Both James and Dr. Julius Makone.
Julius Makone.
And James calls and says, Tawanda, I hear you are leaving Cantos. I said, correct. He says, if you leave Canton, you're coming here. NMBZ. Without discussing the terms, I said, deal. So it's James who recruited me.
Wow.
And I joined NMBZ.
Before you go there, I mean, you fight the Econet case. Econet versus the Minister of Communications.
Yes.
You win a seminal case, which resulted in Econet's wireless being declared duly licensed. When you look back, what were the lessons from that? This is a long fought battle. Yeah. What lessons do you pick out of that season?
Lesson number one, strategy. Whatever you do, you need to have a strategy. You need to have a plan which says, where do you want to go? How are you going to get there? Mm-hmm. One of the controversial decisions I made was to go to the High Court. My client didn't want me to go to the High Court, Strive. All the other lawyers thought I should go back to the Supreme Court and say, we've been here, we've got your orders, these guys have not followed the orders, you have declared that the monopoly is not there anymore, can you declare us licensed? I said, no, I don't want to go that route. I'm going to go to the High Court on the basis that the adjudication process has been unfair, it has been biased, and its outcome is irrational.
Brave.
That's the decision I made, and I had to push my client to agree with that decision, which I made. Because from my reading of the records, I didn't think there was anything more.
But this required you to gather the bits and pieces of information and evidence to support the fact that the adjudication had not been right. And you're confident you're going to do this.
Yeah. At the time, we didn't have the evidence. But, the surrounding circumstances cried out loud.
Yes.
So I relied on that and put together a skeletal case that supported the inference of bias, of irrationality, that tainted the decision by the technical committee. And then I made an application for an Anton Pillar order, what we call an Anton Pillar order, which was an order to go and seize the working papers of the technical committee, because I believed there was the evidence of irrationality and of bias. So I made the application ex parte without giving notice to the other side. It went into the High Court. I appeared before Justice Gillespie, and he granted the order. So the sheriff went, seized all the working papers, and dumped them in the High Court library. I had to go through all those papers. At the time, I was being assisted by Josephine McNally, who was working under me. We went through the papers, every bit of paper, and what we discovered was unimaginable.
Including bits of papers saying, Tamuana, we're going to fix this man. Fascinating, isn't
Fascinating, including the preparation of the big documents, the invitation to tender document by Telecel International, Jim Galan and Mika Rwaitira. Yes. And you know, those days they would use fax machines, you know, and the fax print would show you where it is coming from and so on. Everything was there.
Because Telecel had been granted a license.
Yes.
Ahead of Econet.
Yes. And Telecel had been declared the winner of that process. And on a bid contest where they had prepared the document. And it was amazing.
What are the lessons for a young lawyer from this case? What are the lessons? I mean,
the big lesson is use all the tools available in your profession. You know, the Anton Pillar order, it's a tool that gathers dust in the shelves of every lawyer. When you are seized with a case and you have a plan, use all the tools available to gather the evidence so that you can put together a convincing case. And that's what I would say to a young lawyer. And that is what I did. It put the case beyond doubt.
In your view, looking at the way you practice law then, and what we are seeing at the present moment, what goes through your mind? And before you answer, I'm going to quote you directly, say, the problem with the legal profession is that you are only a darling of the lawyers when you can pay their fees. When you can't, the lawyers avoid you like a plague. That's why lawyers are such bad business people. Most don't invest in potential. Most live for the day. Is that an accurate reflection of your thoughts?
Yes, it is. Yet it is. And Strive's case is the example for me. I represented Strive when he was at his lowest.
When essentially he couldn't afford to pay fees.
Yes. But he has grown one of the largest businesses in the country.
Absolutely.
Which has impacted individuals, the whole economy, and so on, which continues to be a client, coveted by many other lawyers. But it started there. You have to analyze potential. And there are some services you have to offer for free. But it will pay back in due course.
You know, I want to praise you there, because for me and to a lot of people out there, our country, Tawanda, cries out for ethical leadership, principled leadership, sacrificial leadership in the banking sector, the lawyers, the journalists, and the politicians, and everybody else. That's what we don't have at this present moment. The legal fraternity is suffering the same thing. You have lawyers stealing people's money. You have doctors profiting from the ill health of other people. I mean, what do you say to that?
You know, one day I made my decision. It's amazing. I was on a call with Strive, and he asked me, what's your strategy in the current environment? I said, Mkoma, I've made a decision. And the decision I've made is to be selfish. He said, elaborate, what do you mean? I said, I've realized, number one, I'm not a politician. I cannot impact on the whole country in a political way because my skill set does not allow me to be that. But what I will do is I will develop my business so as to employ people and empower those around me. And I said, I believe if a number of other people decide to do that, to impact their immediate environment in an area where they have the appropriate skill set, that's only how we can turn our country round. That's how we have Mkoma Trevor doing what he's doing in his skill set, touching souls, inspiring business people and individuals. If we all, in our areas of expertise and competence, focus on causing that change, we can change this country.
I fully subscribe to that. My pushback, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, is that it's not so many of us who are like that. Many of us believe as long as I'm okay, it's okay. We had a guest before you came here who introduced us to a new term. At least I'm still fine. At least at least in the Nyambirai, at least I've got solar power. That selfishness, that is not like your kind of selfish, that has got a ripple effect. That I'm going to eat and I'm going to be okay and I don't care about anybody else. What's your pushback on that?
I'm sorry, I would call it narrow-mindedness, because I cannot do well unless my entire environment does well. Because I don't exist in a vacuum. As a business, I need customers. And I need for those customers to be productive so that they can give me business. It's all interrelated. So that's why when I use selfishness in quotes, I meant to focus on my area of expertise, and leave the other various areas of expertise to those that are better placed to handle those areas. If we become that narrow-minded, we will eventually collapse, because if everybody around us does badly, at the end of the day, we won't have customers.
That's the bottom line, isn't it? Talk to me about, when did you are a lawyer, you're practicing, having had this dream. When does the idea, I want to get into business, start cropping in? When do you start seeing habits that lead you to, I'm going to be an entrepreneur? Can you identify that point?
Yes. From a very early stage, I grew up on a farm. I would ask my parents for me to have my own few beds of vegetables and so on, so that I could sell and maybe generate some pocket money. And what preoccupied my mind even at that early stage is the ability to upscale what I'm doing. With the little I knew at the time, I would sit down and say, how many plants should I have on a bed? So how many beds should I have? And most of the time, I would concentrate on that and forget that the water supply was not infinite. So I would make so many beds and plant so many seedlings only to realize I didn't have sufficient water.
Right.
So I've always been that kind of person. Always looking for an opportunity.
Where do you think you get that from? Is it something that you saw your parents do? I mean, you come from a big family. That's one thing I forget. You come from a family of 16 people. Is it 16 kids?
Yeah. I come from a big family. Amazingly, my father was an only child in his family. Yes, the extended family is bigger. We are Charumbiras as well. But we grew up alone with our father,
Mm.
who was an only child. And
Is he the one that inspires you to want to get into business, or what?
yes, he was a farmer who farmed for business. And my eldest brother a few days ago told me my dad's story, which I did not know. All I remember is one day, my dad was a footballer. He used to play for a team that was called Butter Power, which was in
the Midlands, yes.
Yeah. So, one day they were late, coming from Gweru where they were playing. And so he was late for work, where he was the foreman. And his boss, Lawrence Footer at the time, called him and said, "Nyson, when are you going to start working for your children? All this work that you do, you work for me and my children. I give you half day on Saturday and you are off on Sunday. I thought you'd use those days to also work for your family."
Wow.
From then on, my dad took his footballing kits, gave to my eldest brother and my older brother, Boniface, and he quit soccer. And from then on, he started farming commercially. Wow. And he became a great farmer and had bought many cattle and so on. That's his journey. That's how it became. So I then grew up in that environment where we always used to work so hard. It was not enough to produce for food. We had to feed everybody else. And we had to make it an enterprise, a business, to generate money.
I'll stop you there. Wow. When we come back, I want just to go to the idea to start TN Enterprises and everything else that goes into it. What an ambitious project. I can't wait to get into there. So at home, don't go away. When you come back, let's come and look at the fantastic work Tawanda Nyambirai has done building the TN infrastructure. See you on the other side.
The cost structures that the banks have are very heavy, and they need to maintain those cost structures, and they do that through these fees and charges.
Welcome back to our conversation with Tawanda Nyambirai, a lawyer and an entrepreneur. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tawanda. So the research I have here says in 2001, you decided to set up TN Holdings Limited. What was the thinking behind that? And correct me if I'm wrong, I get the sense that by the time you started TN Holdings, you already had a portfolio of things, for lack of a better name, that you already running. But in the first instance, what was the thinking behind, let me start TN Holdings?
The story behind it was that I'm at NMB with great mentors, Dr. Julius Makon, James Mshore, outstanding individuals, who did not hold back in terms of giving me direction regarding my professional growth and regarding what I needed to do in business. So, I was already, when in law practice, I was a corporate financier, working with almost every bank in the country, suggesting structures and so on. And one of the structures that I developed was the ownership structure for Joiner Center when I was still at Canton Timmerman. So there came a time when I decided I need to do my own thing. So I spoke to my bosses and I talked to my friend Patterson Timber, of Renaissance.
Yes.
And we agreed we should establish a corporate finance boutique called Renaissance.
All right.
So as the legal brains, Patterson says, you should go ahead with the registration. So we did the registrations. We registered Renaissance. When I announced and Patterson Timber announced, all hell broke loose. Our bosses said, no way. We can't afford for both of you to leave. PFT, Patterson Fungai Timber can leave, but you have to remain behind. I don't know whether my bosses spoke to Strive. Then we had cell phones. Strive calls me, calls Patterson Timber, says, let's have tea. We went for tea with Professor Nyasema. And Strive said, look, you can't both leave. If you both leave, it will also affect me because just imagine what would happen if NMB were to call all the facilities that we have with NMB. So I would suggest if Patterson goes, I will support him with capital. And
because you were both helping Strive at that time.
Yes, we were both helping Strive. So we then agreed strategically that it was better for me to continue at NMB since the bosses at NMB wanted me to continue there, and Patterson would go with Renaissance and Strive would support him. So that's what happened. I remained at NMB, did my work. Then it got to a stage where I believed I'd done enough. So I went to see my boss, James, and tendered an oral resignation. He was shocked. And I then went to Dr. Julius Makoni as well. Then they were very mature about it. They said, okay, we're going to vacate the third floor at Unity Court. You can use that to do your own thing, but you can continue supporting us here. So they allowed me to move down to the third floor. They recruited Dev Piri to take over my portfolio as head of corporate finance at NMB. And I started TN Financial Services from within the NMB premises in the third floor with the blessings of my...
What sister. Maturity is that?
Awesome,
wow.
Awesome guy. So that's how I started. Then I had to leave because we then both bid for the court commanded. And Pedijanda was the chairman of NMB and also...
It's a mess.
Kotco, with Sylvester Ngune, CEO of Kotco. So I won the mandate as TN Financial Services. And it became obvious that I could not continue at Unity Court.
Conflict.
Because this was a big mandate.
Yeah.
So I called up Lishon Chipango. I said, I'm looking for premises. He said, I've got space at 101 Union Avenue. That's how I then migrated from Unity Court to 101 Union Avenue with a huge mandate. That's how I started TN Financial Services. I'm a corporate financier through and through. And the little I've made from financial advisory. The other businesses people see, it's, when you are into corporate finance, the mandates can be far in between. But when you do a good job on a good mandate, you make a bit of cash and you need to find a home for it. So the other business are a result of us investing the surplus cash.
So your core is
corporate finance and asset management.
Right.
So that's how I started. In a short period of time, I set up TN Asset Management.
Which is now the third largest asset manager in the country.
Correct. And at the time, there were no rules. And when the Reserve Bank started setting the rules for asset managers, we were part of the initial groups to be consulted. What should we regulate? Should we stipulate minimum capital requirements? And I was one of the people who said, no, asset management depends on skill and on trust and not on the size of your balance sheet. Because once you stipulate capital requirements for them, what's going to happen is that they will take deposits. They should not take deposits, but they should take people's money and manage it on people's behalf without that money belonging to them. So, some of the core principles that we then put together were part of the teams that were consulted to shape the landscape in the asset management space.
Talk to me about what lessons it. And one thing I'm going to go to is you have worked with some of the most amazing people in this country, and I'm just going to name them now. I mean, some of the most amazing strategic thinkers, leaders, bold people. Strive Masiwa, James Mshore, Makoni, Julius, Anthony Eastwood, Mervyn Immerman, Kenan Dube, Nick Rudnick. I mean, these are great people that you've worked with. Talk to me about what you've learned, 2 or 3 things that you've learned working with these luminaries.
The first thing is the value of relationships. All those people you mentioned, we more or less became friends and built strong relationships. You mentioned Nick Rudnick. He was my junior at Country Women. Angari mpana wangu. And he has grown to be so big. And Nick is such an amazing person. When I would get caught up and become busy,
behind, but
Nick would take his car, go and pick up my son from school, take him home, Kudomboshava, and come back. Those relationships. And that is what characterized the work environment I built with all those people you listed. We became friends. We built strong relationships.
Talk to me again about the lessons learned from listing NMBZ and Econet. I mean, these were big ticket assignments. What lesson did you learn that you can share with young people watching you now?
Firstly, on the listing of NMB, the big lesson I learned is that there is a world out there. NMBZ gave me exposure to international law firms who at those early stages were looking at law as a business and not just a profession. I learned, subtle ways. As lawyers, you're not allowed to market, but there are subtle ways in which you could do it. Those lawyers from London would tell me, once you do a big transaction, prepare what you call a Bible, where you put all the documents, put them in a folder that has got your name. And on every document, on the corner of the document, put a clip that has got your brand. So all those subtle ways of marketing, I learned from Chitma Sena Decade, who were one of the legal firms that we worked with on NMBZ. And I'm proud to say that shaped even the documentation in Zimbabwe. I learned of the critical commercial documentation from Chitma Sena Decade. And most of the documents in this market, I could say, are derivatives of the documents that I've done.
Fantastic.
Yeah, especially on commercial transactions. Call it seculars, whether they are demergers, mergers, acquisitions, and so on. You could trace some of the language to the language that I learned and that I normally use on corporate documentation.
And Econet, lessons from the Econet listing?
I learned, boldness. Strive decided to raise a lot of money on a startup, which we listed as a startup. He made that leap of faith, that bold decision, and which has inspired me to the present day. The risk is worth taking, provided you've done your homework. But there has to come a point where you take the leap of faith and take some risks. When I look at this amazing platform that you have built, I say to myself,
thank you.
Nkoma, Trevor should probably have an app like YouTube and invite all these journalists when I dug up and so on to be doing their trade on his app. He is that big because he owned the largest print media that we have known in this country. So it's not enough just to have this platform, but it has to include every journalist so that they can come and practice their trade on an app that you want.
Do I pay for that?
No, you don't. No, you don't. But you know, looking at you, the inspiration that we derive from you, and when I look at the numbers you have done, I start to say, look, all these youngsters, these journalists should really come on this platform and play their trade. And this platform should be in the mode of YouTube and the other platforms.
Thank you so much, my dear brother. Thank you. I'll take that. And fortunately, I'm not going to get an invoice, eh? Talk to me now about, you start TN Bank. And this is a long story. You start TN Bank, you sell it to Econet, they turn it to Stewart Bank, you decide to buy it back, which is what you've got right now. Yeah. Two questions. Why did you start it and sell it to Econet? And then they call it Stewart Bank. And now you come back and buy it. Those two questions. Why did you sell it to Econet?
Those years were difficult for indigenous banks. We were a good bank as TN Bank, but we could not do some of the work that a bank is supposed to do. I'm a strong believer that, you know, holding a banking license is not so that you can earn fee income. A banking license is a license for you to make money on the liability side of your balance sheet. That is, people deposit money with you that you must lend.
Deploy,
intermediate, deploy the money so that you can grow the economy. When I realized that my pocket was not deep enough to do that, I approached the governor of the Reserve Bank at the time, Dr. Gono, to say, I don't think I'm doing enough as TN Bank. I don't think we are being impactful. I think it's now time for someone with deeper pockets to buy the bank. He said, I will have a tough time defending this to government. Put it in writing. I wrote a letter to Dr. Gono. And the feedback I got from him is he was asked by government to give him the letter as the justification. And I was even later on asked in a political forum whether I really wanted to do this transaction. And I said, yes, it's my decision. Number one. The second one was, at the time, I realized that the US dollar was here to stay. Unless I was in a space where I could generate my own US dollars, I was not going to be strong enough. I wanted to go into mining. Mining is a heavy capex business. I needed money. And the only asset that could give me reasonable money for me to go into mining was the bank. So I engaged with Mr. Masiwa, and for Econet, the strategic importance of TN Bank was the EcoCash license, because we got the EcoCash license under TN Bank.
Really?
Which continues to hold the license to the present day. It's held by the bank. Strive's idea, called EcoCash, we were the implementers of the idea he came up with. And so it was strategic that the control of the entity holding the license should, if not with me, should vest with Econet. So it was strategic for Econet to buy it. So they bought, and one of the most important decisions that I made was, Strive then said to me, I know you, Mnina. If I give you 100% Mariako, you're going to spend it on all these other businesses to prop them up.
I'm going to give you shares instead.
He says, I'll give you shares, but I'll give you 50% of the shares. The other shares, I'm keeping them for you. When it's time, you will come to me and ask for them.
Wow.
I trusted him to do that. So he became my portfolio manager, so to speak, and held back 50%
of the value of TN Bank.
When I then came across the Arcturus opportunity,
gold mine,
2017, that's when I went back and I said, Mkoma, I think I found the investment. And That's how I bought Actura's mine, and developed it. And now it has rolled into life. An amazing mine, which I think is going to be in the top 5 of the biggest gold producers in the country.
So we're going to get back to gold just briefly. And then why now are you going back to buy the bank from Econet?
So here I am. I've finished developing Actura's mine. It's starting to roll into life. We're doing the budgets and so on. And I have investors all over the shore who are saying, can we forward buy? Can we, taking positions on gold? So I then realized we will have an abundance of cash flow, which it is not enough to manage through 10 asset management. I would need a bank. So I go back to Nam Commerce. He says, of course, you can buy it back. Mm-hmm. You can buy my shares. I called the Steward Bank anyway, because I believed one day you would come if you want to buy it.
I was the steward.
Yes. An amazing guy he has been to me. Yeah.
Wow. And now you are turning Steward Bank, which is you're giving it a new name. Don't preempt me. I'm trying to look for it. You're calling it TN Cybertech. Mm-hmm. But what I like is that you're saying TN Cybertech is going to be the first neobank in Zimbabwe. That's visionary thinking. That. Talk to me about that vision of it being a neobank, being a purely digital bank with mobile apps and digital accounts.
Yeah. We don't pursue technology for the sake of it. Mm. Our pursuit of technology is purposeful. One of the biggest problems with banking in Zimbabwe right now is that it is so expensive. You deposit your money into a bank account. Rather than the money earning interests and the amount increasing, it reduces because of bank charges.
Yeah.
That happens because the cost structures that the banks have are very heavy, and they need to maintain those cost structures, and they do that through these fees and charges. It's a problem that we need to solve. And to solve
essentially, Tawanda, this is the brick and mortar strategy.
Yes.
Banks have changed.
Yeah. So it's a strategy that's very costly to maintain. So our decision then is, if through the use of technology, we can have unmanned branches. Mm-hmm. And why branches? Part of the Zimbabwean culture is for you to believe that you've got a bank you can trust. There has to be something visible, a structure that you can go to. We have done our research and people want that. But so we have said, to maintain a structure and yet reduce the costs, what we are going to do is to make them unmanned structures where you get in there. There is a robot. Our team is working on developing a robot called Batsi, which can recognize your face. It greets you. Hi, Mr. Trevor. What can I do for you today?
Possible in this AI generation, isn't it?
Yeah, very possible. And directs you to a machine with the interactive teller machines, where if you want the assistance of a human being, you press a button, and then people from a remote location will come on screen and you'll communicate, and they will assist you through the transaction process.
How far is that vision from real implementation?
We are working on implementation right now. Our first branch is going to be Pelham's building, the ground floor at Pelham's building. That's where the first branch is going to be, which will be an unmanned branch. And we have done some tests, not using that AI-driven technology, using interactive CCTV cameras. We have branches whereby someone manages remotely. The manager is not resident in the branch, but he has got interactive CCTV cameras where he can talk to his people, he can see his people, they can hear him, they can talk back, and they can communicate. He can do opening of day, end of day, tilling, and everything remotely. And I've got one of my managers, Kenyas, does that. It gives you an ability to manage even 5 branches being one manager.
Wow.
And the advantage of technology is if you are a physical person at a branch, you can be at a particular point at a time. Someone can steal around the corner. But if you have everything before you on CCTV camera, you can see every square meter of the shop. And you'll be able to intervene and take corrective measures.
I'm going to stop you there. We're going to take a break. We're doing something unusual here. We're doing part 4, which we don't usually do. But I want to come back and speak to you about what I think is a very ambitious project, which is a gold refinery, because I think the capacity there, I say to myself, is he growing vegetables without checking if he's got enough water? That's the kind of thinking I had. But the other crazy idea that when you first mentioned it, the Coghlan Bank, I thought you were absolutely nuts. But there it is. It's coming alive. So at home, don't go away. When you come back, we're going to go and look into Tawanda's Coghlan Bank, or the Livestock Bank, and his gold refining infrastructure that he's building. So please don't go away. See you on the other side.
Can we bank cattle so that we can place a derivative asset in the hands of a rural person that will make them bankable? Then I developed the concept of banking cattle.
Welcome to our conversation with Tawanda Nyambirai, a lawyer and entrepreneur. Like we said before we took the break, Tawanda, you've gone into gold, TN Gold, which is the Arcturus mine, with an estimated capacity of 34 tons. Is it 34 tons or 34,000? What is it?
No, it does, in a day, around 120 tons a day. 120 tons an hour.
An hour.
Yeah. So it depends on how many hours you have ZESA.
Okay.
If you have ZESA for 20 hours in a day, you multiply that.
So this is ore.
More than 2,000.
This is ore.
Tons of ore.
Yeah, right.
Then the yield is determined by the quality of the ore.
All right.
At times you have a reasonable quality ore. We can go to more than 3 kilograms a day of gold.
Okay.
And at times our lowest has been around 1.5 kilograms of gold a day.
Okay.
This is all because it's a new mine we have started, all in carbon, pending elution. I think our elution hopefully is going to be before the end of the month. But those are the kinds of yields we are working with, around a range from 1.5 kilograms of gold a day to 3 kilograms of gold a day.
But you're already investing quite significantly in gold processing. What's the thinking? And I think the capacity is quite high. What's the capacity of this plant that you put?
We've built it in phases. So we have different capacities within the same plant. The CIP, which is the final part of the plant, that is the carbon in pulp section of the plant, is much bigger capacity. I think it can do more than 5,000 tons of ore in a day.
Okay.
The limit at the moment is at our ball mills. The ball mills we have at the moment, those are the ones that do around 120 tons an hour, which translates to around 2,400 or thereabout tons of ore a day.
What's the long-term strategic thinking there?
The long term is to upscale. Our hope is by end of year, look, one of our biggest ball mills has already been manufactured in China. It has got a capacity of 400 tons an hour.
Of ore.
400 tons of ore an hour, which will take us above 10 kilograms a day.
Right.
Depending on the quality of the ore. And we hope, by God's grace, before the year is out, the big plant would have been shipped and it will be here. So the intention is to upscale the gold production. and generate more value.
We wish you the best with that.
Thank you.
And then the cattle bank. Like I said, when I first heard you talk about it, I was like, wow, is this guy all right? But clearly, that's another long-term kind of thinking that as a way of getting the unbanked in Africa, but do own stock, being involved in the banking sector. How does it actually work? Because you've actually introduced the 10 Livestock Trust. How is it going?
2011, I was invited by the Association of Bankers in Africa and Asia.
Right.
To be one of the panelists to talk about how we can solve the problem of the unbanked in Africa and in the third world. And my reasoning then was people are unbanked for many reasons. And one of the reasons is commercial viability. So how can we make a rural African bankable, commercially viable? Then in my analysis, I noticed that one of the most common assets that Africans do have is cattle. Then I said, can we bank cattle so that we can place a derivative asset in the hands of a rural person that will make them bankable? Then I developed the concept of banking cattle. And the next question I asked myself, is it acceptable in our culture? In Shona culture, they've got sumo, mombe kurunzira kama wakaringanzira. If someone gives you their cattle to look after, when you get milk from them, you should always be on the lookout to ensure that one day if the owners come and demand their cattle back, you've got a fallback position. In other words, it's a liquidity maxim. It says, if you are a custodian of something that's not yours, don't commit it long term, because the owner can come at any time and demand it back, which is a banking principle that is embedded in our culture. So I said, cattle can be banked. How do we bank cattle? If you look at some European countries and some Asian countries, there's no free grazing of cattle anymore. Cattle are bred mudzimba in some warehouses where they are pen-fed. Not everyone can pen-feed. So what we need to do to solve the problem of shortage of land, the empowerment of rural people, drought is to develop structures where we can pen-feed cattle so that they don't rely on free grazing to meet the demand for beef and so on, and solve the problem of scarcity of land, because it's not an infinite resource. That's how I came up with the concept of cattle banking and started rolling it out. We've been doing it for more than 10 years now. We've learned the mistakes that we need to learn. It's an amazing concept. We have people's deposits now in excess of 2,000 cattle. And in the past, we had limitations because we started with free grazing. And now we are developing the infrastructure, and we are starting to grow the grasses and so on, so that the cattle can rely 100% on pen fattening.
So how does it work? I've got 5 cattle.
You've got 5 cattle.
I come and hand them over to you.
You hand over.
You give me scrip?
We give you a certificate of deposit. When we started, we partnered with the POSB that recognized that certificate as bankable. If you go with that certificate, if you go to them, they can lend you money on the strength of the certificate without even going to see the cattle.
And it's working.
And it's working now. Steward Bank can do that. So it makes the raw folk bankable because they will have a bankable certificate. They can then borrow the money and apply the money to other productive uses.
How do you factor in the risk of, climate, all those kind of things that would affect the value of the stock? The most important thing is feed. We have 2 approaches. During the rain season, we have tractors and people all over the shore cutting natural grass. It's a cheap way of doing it, because it also prevents the environmental hazards, fires when the grass is dry. So we cut grass, convert it into silage. We have silage pits
We treat the grass and put the silage to take it out when we've run out of feed. And then growing the grass to feed the cattle. So that's one of the most important things, the feed. Then the rest is expertise, veterinary doctors and good cattlemen.
Wow. Amazing. We're going to be watching this space and see how
it's going to grow. As it stands, we entered into an agreement, an NDA with the government of the state of Enugu in Nigeria.
Wow.
And the Honorable Governor, Peter Mbao, said, you got to come and launch this thing here. We have invitations all over the show.
How is Zambia doing?
We pulled out of Zambia many years ago.
Okay.
We pulled out of Zambia because of unreliable partners. It was a very difficult environment for us. The partners wouldn't account, and we just decided it wasn't worth our while.
Would you call one of your failures? And if so, what is failure in your life taught you?
One of my failures, indeed, misjudging people, a failure to choose the right partners, taking some people at face value.
And early on in your life, ambitious as you were, you wanted to buy Power Speed. Does that get onto the side of your failures? Roy Turner refused to sell Power Speed to you. How do you look at that opportunity and the lessons from there?
It was a failure in a way, but an opportunity to learn. Because I was buying the shares on the stock market or on a business I did not know very well. So in due course, when I had become the second largest shareholder, I became suspicious that the business was more of a cartel that protects certain interests. And then maybe it is not meant to make money. Maybe it is the suppliers who are supposed to make money. I don't know. I'm speculating.
Okay.
So when you get to that, it's a learning experience. When you see at times, don't just buy a business unless you really know what the purpose of the business is and what its value is.
Tawanda, you became a millionaire in your 20s. I mean, you've made more money than that now. What's the next big thing that will give you that sense of purpose?
Millions don't drive me. When I made my money there, I didn't even think I was a millionaire. It's only now when people ask me and I do the numbers and I look back and say, I think I became a millionaire a long time ago. I'm not driven by millions of dollars. What drives me is access to resources. If I develop relationships and channels that can give me access to resources for me to be able to do what I want to do, that is what drives me. It's not the millions or billions. If I want to set up something and I've got sufficient access to resources to set it up, that's what drives me. And I'm happy to say so far, there hasn't been anything that I want to do that I failed to access resources that would enable me to do it.
Well, apart from God, what's the biggest contributor to your success?
Advisory work, asset management, advisory work, and investments. Because when you make money, I'm an ardent investor. One of my idols is Warren Buffett. From the word go, when I would make my investments on the stock market, I would read about his tenets, his investment tenets, what you look at, honest management, a simple business model, and so on. And those principles have guided me in investing.
Long-term investment.
Long-term, you invest long-term. At times you invest short-term. At times you take bets as well. So it's a whole mixture. I think I'm a very good investor. I've done well.
Well, the results are there. They speak for themselves, isn't it? Let's do books. I know you've been talking about Warren Buffett right now. I thought I would get out these, seeing as I am talking to you, and I know you have read this.
Yes. Wow.
Our good friend,
Dr. Julius Marconi.
Dr. Reverend Julius Marconi. Talk to me about, you've read this book.
Yes, I have.
Talk to me about this book.
The lessons I have learned about this book is unless you are bold enough to say it all, don't venture.
Don't write a book.
Yeah. If you read Dr. Julius Marconi's books, where he lasted after somebody would talk about his last. And some of us don't have the courage to do that. And that is what...
Any chance of us getting a book from you? Because I saw Bettina Gapa reaching out to you and saying, it's time to write a memo. And I agree with Bettina. We deserve a book from you.
Still under consideration. So the biggest thing I learned from there is, and also honesty.
Yeah.
The doc takes time to look at himself. Hence the title, On Vivant Banker Bishop. It aptly describes him. So he has taken time to look at himself in the mirror. He says, I'm this guy who loves good things. I'm a bishop. I'm a banker. And you get all of that from his book.
Fantastic.
Yes.
I've not yet read it, but
very amazing.
I've got it there. But when I saw that you've read it, I thought I could take out to say to Zimbabweans. There's a good friend of ours who's written a book, and his name is the Right Reverend Dr. Julius Marconi, a celebrated entrepreneur and somebody that I've admired for a very, very long time. So there is that. I thought I'll take this one out. Amazon Unbound. On Jeff Bezos and the invention of what they call a global empire, written by Brett Stone. It's a great book. It takes you into Amazon and how Jeff Bezos built Amazon, his weaknesses, his strength, and so many lessons about what to do and what not to do as one builds a business. So I thought I would recommend this out to people out there. Then the other one is a man who is in the news, Elon Musk, by one of my favorite writers, Walter Isaacson. Okay. When you read this book, which I did before Elon Musk got into partnership with Donald Trump, I could tell that it would end badly because these are two men with two egos who are very driven, and the clash that we've seen happening was bound to happen. But here's one thing. You can never underrate this man. This man works very hard. This man is a genius. This man sleeps in an office to make sure that he achieves what he wants. And he does go out and get the right people to work for him. That's a book that I would recommend. Again, written by Walter Isaacson, who wrote the Steve Jobs book on Apple. Great book to read. The other one is by Alistair Campbell. Winners, how they succeeded. Nelson Mandela, Narendra Modi, a lot of other people that he's analyzed, including the special one, Jose Mourinho, for those who love football. A great book with a lot of nuggets. What books do you want to recommend to our book-loving audience out there?
My favorite book, which is a professional text, is a book by Patrick Lencioni, one of the leading management consultants. The title is The 4 Obsessions of an Extraordinary Executive. I read it over and over again.
Wow.
It has informed how I approach my management and manage my businesses. The 4 Obsessions of an Extraordinary.
I'll make sure to get that one.
Executive.
Fantastic. The next book?
The next books are religious. I love the God's Generals, which is a book about the Pentecostal movement from Azusa, the Azusa Street Revival, and how it came to these parts of the world. It's one of the books that I love reading. Yeah.
You say you listen to gospel music. Who is your favorite gospel singer?
There have been 2. Derek Nzimande from South Africa.
Right.
And Jimmy Swaggart, and may he recover soon. He's not feeling well, so we read.
Fantastic. My brother, thank you so much. Thank you so much. This episode is going to enrich a lot of people out there. I'm so grateful that you created the time to join us. You are a great inspiration to a lot of people. You might not be aware because you are humble, but you're a great inspiration to a lot of people. People watch what you do. People watch what you say. People see that you are a careful, measured person. People are inspired by what you've been able to achieve. So thank you so much. Zimbabwe needs 100 of you to be able to change. And I fully subscribe to your thinking that says, if all of us could, in our spaces, steward those spaces in a principled manner, and the ripple effect of it then begins to affect others, that's how we'll change this country. I absolutely believe that too. So thank you so much, my brother.
Thank you.
May God continue to bless you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Continue sitting there. Allow me to turn over and talk to our viewers who are all over the world. So thank you so much for your support. I'm going to be making noise about this. We're excited about the 90,000.5 or 4 subscribers that we've got. We're excited about the 12.3 million viewers that are coming in. The platform is growing at a great speed at the present moment. And we're big on TikTok, we're big on Instagram, and we are grateful for your support. Please come in and comment on what we've just been discussing with my brother Tawanda, and let's see what you think about what we've been saying. We read all your comments, the good, the bad ones, the criticism, the praise. We take everything. So keep it coming. Until next time, cheers to you all.